Hi, welcome my channel. For years she was the joke, until she made him the punchline. What happens when the one who tears you down gets exposed in front of everyone? This isn't just revenge, it's power reclaimed. Emma Carter had spent 5 years perfecting the art of smiling through humiliation. As a renowned interior designer in Manhattan, she was respected for her creative vision and ability to transform spaces into works of art. But at home, she was nothing more than the butt of her husband's jokes. Ryan, a financial analyst with a sharp wit and an inflated ego, had a habit of using Emma as his personal punchline, spinning exaggerated stories at every social gathering to entertain their friends at her expense. Tonight was no different. Their stylish Manhattan apartment was filled with laughter, not the warm, genuine kind, but the mocking echoes of people amused by Ryan's cruel humor. Emma gripped her wine glass, forcing a practiced smile, just as she always had. But as Ryan cut her off mid-sentence to mock her once again, something inside her shifted. She was tired of being reduced to a joke. She had kept his darkest secret for 2 years out of love and loyalty, while he freely humiliated her without remorse. But tonight, for the first time, she wasn't going to stay silent. If Ryan wanted a story that would make people laugh, she was about to give them one they would never forget. The evening had started like every other dinner party they hosted, Ryan at the center of attention, spinning stories designed to make Emma look foolish, while their guests laughed along. Seated in their sleek Manhattan apartment, surrounded by colleagues, old college friends, and social acquaintances, Emma watched as Ryan leaned forward with a smirk, ready to deliver another punchline at her expense. "You guys won't believe this," he began, raising his glass. "Emma got lost inside one of her own design projects last week. She called me in a panic like a lost toddler in a department store." The room erupted with laughter, and Emma's face burned as she tightened her grip on her wine glass. It wasn't true, of course. Ryan had exaggerated the situation, twisting minor details into something ridiculous for entertainment. She had hoped to share good news tonight, a major career milestone, landing a high-profile celebrity client. But the moment she opened her mouth to speak, Ryan cut in smoothly, shaking his head. "Oh, come on, babe. You know Sophia probably just felt sorry for you. Or maybe she liked your outfit that day." Another wave of laughter. Emma's stomach twisted. It was always the same. Every achievement of hers was dismissed, every effort belittled. But tonight, Ryan wasn't stopping there. He slung an arm around her shoulders in mock affection, his voice dripping with amusement. "And the best part? She actually thinks she could handle having a baby. Can you imagine?" A tense silence fell over the room. Even those who had been laughing before looked uneasy. Everyone knew Emma and Ryan had been married for 5 years without children, but no one had ever asked why. Emma felt her chest tighten, rage bubbling beneath the surface. Ryan didn't stop. "I mean, let's be honest. Some people just aren't cut out to be parents. Right, honey?" He chuckled, clearly enjoying himself, unaware of the storm brewing inside his wife. Emma inhaled sharply. For years, she had let these moments pass. She had told herself it wasn't worth the fight, that keeping the peace was better than speaking up. But now, looking around the room, at the people who had laughed at her expense for so long, she realized something. She wasn't the joke. Ryan was. And tonight, she was about to make sure everyone knew it. Emma sat motionless, the weight of years of humiliation pressing down on her. But something inside her had snapped. As the laughter died down and the conversation shifted, her mind replayed Ryan's cruelest words, not just tonight, but for the past 5 years. Every snide remark about her work, every dismissive laugh at her expense, and most of all, the lie he had just told. Ryan knew exactly why they had no children. He was the reason. 2 years ago, after months of avoidance, Ryan had finally agreed to see a doctor. The diagnosis? Complete erectile dysfunction. He had begged her to keep it a secret, his voice laced with desperation. And she had protected his pride while he continued to tear hers apart. And yet, last week, she had overheard him on the phone with Ethan, laughing, telling him that she was frigid and impossible to please. That was the moment the truth began to burn inside her. But she had swallowed it down. Tonight, she wasn't swallowing it anymore. Emma glanced around the room, taking in the faces of their guests. some still oblivious, some shifting uncomfortably, and one person watching her intently, Vanessa. Unlike the others, Vanessa hadn't laughed when Ryan mocked her. Instead, she had given Emma a look. A silent question. How much longer are you going to take this? Emma's fingers loosened around her wine glass as the answer became clear, not another second. Ryan, still basking in his latest insult, reached for his drink, oblivious to the storm brewing next to him. Emma felt an eerie calm settle over her, a clarity she hadn't felt in years. If Ryan wanted to drag their personal struggles into public for a laugh, perhaps it was time for everyone to hear the real joke. She placed her glass down carefully, straightened her posture, and looked directly at Ryan. You know, she said, her voice smooth, almost casual, since we're on the subject of why we don't have kids, maybe you should tell them about your doctor's appointment last year. The shift in the room was immediate. The once lively conversation froze. And for the first time that evening, Ryan's confident smirk wavered. His hand tightened around his glass. But Emma wasn't finished. Go on, Ryan, she continued, tilting her head. You love storytelling. Why don't you tell them what the doctor said? Ryan's smirk faltered. His grip on his glass tightened as the weight of Emma's words settled over the room like a thick fog. For the first time all night, he wasn't in control of the narrative. The laughter had died completely, replaced by a tense, uncomfortable silence as their guests exchanged glances. Emma had never spoken to him like this before. Not in public, not even in private. He tried to recover, forcing a chuckle. Emma, honey, maybe you've had a little too much wine, he said, his voice light but with an unmistakable edge of warning. Emma didn't blink. She wasn't afraid anymore. I'm not drunk, Ryan. In fact, I've never seen things clearer, she said, her voice steady. She turned her attention to their guests, letting the truth unfold like a well-rehearsed speech. Ryan's right about one thing. We haven't had children in 5 years of marriage. But it's not because of me. She let her words linger, watching realization dawn on their friends' faces. Ryan was diagnosed with complete erectile dysfunction 2 years ago. Ryan's face drained of color. His hand jerked forward, knocking over his wine glass, sending deep red liquid spilling across the table. That's enough, he snapped, his voice sharp with panic. This isn't funny anymore. Emma leaned back, calm and composed, watching him squirm. No, Ryan, she said, tilting her head. It never was. A ripple of hushed whispers ran through the room. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, looking anywhere but at his friend, while Vanessa pressed her lips together, her expression unreadable. Ryan had spent years controlling the room, controlling the narrative, but not tonight. Ryan turned to the others, desperate to regain ground. She's twisting things, he spat, forcing a laugh. You all know how she gets. She's just upset, making up stories. I heard you, Ryan. Vanessa cut in, her voice firm. Every head in the room snapped toward her. Last week, on the phone with Ethan, you told him Emma was frigid, that she was the reason things weren't working. But that was a lie, wasn't it? Ryan's mouth opened, then shut. He looked to Ethan for help. But Ethan suddenly seemed deeply interested in the floor. Emma leaned forward, her voice softer now but carrying an undeniable finality. All these years, I kept your secret because I thought it was the right thing to do. I protected you, even when you humiliated me in front of everyone. But you turned me into the joke, made me the problem, lied about me, and now you get to be the punchline. Ryan, how does it feel? The silence in the room was thicker than ever, stretching for what felt like an eternity. For the first time, Ryan had no clever comeback, no sarcastic remark, no escape. Emma had taken back her power, and there was nothing he could do about it. Ryan's face twisted in fury, his carefully crafted mask of charm cracking under the weight of humiliation. He scanned the room, searching for someone, anyone, to come to his defense. But even his closest friends avoided his gaze. His usual allies, the ones who had always laughed along, suddenly looked uncomfortable. The power had shifted, and he could feel it slipping from his grasp. But Ryan wasn't one to go down without a fight. With a forced laugh, he pushed back his chair and tried to reclaim control. All right, he said, his voice tight with barely concealed rage. Emma's had her little moment. We all know how dramatic she can get. He gestured to their friends. desperation creeping into his tone. Come on, you guys know me, you know us. She's twisting things because she's bitter. Emma crossed her arms, completely unfazed. Bitter about what, Ryan? The fact that I've supported you for years while you tore me down? The fact that I protected your secret while you spread lies about me? She shook her head. No, I'm not bitter. Ryan, I'm free. Ryan's jaw clenched, but then his expression darkened, his anger sharpening into something cruel. If he couldn't shut her up, he would drag her down with him. Fine, he sneered. You want to talk about the truth, Emma? Let's talk about your promotion. Tell everyone how you really got it. Late nights in the office. Alone with your boss? He let the implication hang in the air, his voice dripping with venom. Or should I say, your friend Sophia? A stunned silence filled the room. Emma stiffened, but before she could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. I can answer that. Every head turned toward the doorway. Sophia, I've been here for a while, she continued, stepping into the room, long enough to hear you try to drag Emma's name through the mud to save yourself. And let me be clear, Emma got that promotion because she's the best damn designer in my firm. She worked for it, earned it, and deserves every bit of her success. Ryan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. His last-ditch effort had failed spectacularly. Sophia turned toward the others. And for the record, the only person riding on someone else's success in this marriage is him. The words landed like a hammer, and the final pieces of Ryan's carefully constructed image crumbled around him. He had no more stories, no more lies, no more power. For the first time in years, Ryan was completely, utterly exposed. The room was eerily silent as Sophia's words settled over the guests like a heavy fog. Ryan had no comeback, no sarcastic remark, no way to twist the narrative in his favor. His once loyal friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly seeing him in a new light, not as the charming, witty storyteller, but as the insecure, cruel man he truly was. The tension in the air was suffocating, and for the first time in their 5 years of marriage, Emma felt completely free. Guests began to gather their things, making excuses to leave, suddenly uninterested in being part of the Ryan Carter show. Even Ethan, who had once been Ryan's closest ally, clapped him on the shoulder awkwardly before muttering, "Take care, man," and walking out without looking back. Vanessa, however, lingered for a moment, giving Emma a knowing nod, a silent acknowledgement of the strength it had taken to finally speak up. Ryan, still sitting frozen in his chair, finally snapped out of his shock. He turned to Emma, his voice low, pleading. "Emma, come on," he murmured. "Let's talk about this. In private. You don't want to throw everything away over one bad night." Emma stared at him, this man she had once loved, once protected at the cost of her own dignity. She felt nothing but exhaustion. "I already did, Ryan," she said simply. 5 years of my life, gone. She grabbed her purse, turning toward the door without a second glance. Ryan's voice hardened. "If you walk out that door, Emma, don't bother coming back." She paused only for a second, then smiled. A real, genuine smile. "That's the first funny thing you've said all night, Ryan," she said over her shoulder. "Because trust me, I won't." And with that, she walked out, leaving Ryan sitting alone in the ruins of his own making. 6 months later, Emma Carter barely recognized her own life, and in the best possible way. The suffocating weight that had once pressed down on her shoulders, the constant second-guessing, the shrinking of herself to fit inside Ryan's cruel narrative, all of it was gone. Her career had flourished in ways she hadn't even imagined, now that she no longer had someone whispering doubts into her ear. She had landed 2 major celebrity clients, secured a feature in a top design magazine, and was even considering opening her own firm. Without Ryan's constant ridicule chipping away at her confidence, she finally saw herself the way others had always seen her: brilliant, talented, and capable. More importantly, her personal life had transformed as well. She and Sophia had become close friends, bonding over more than just work. Instead of dodging Ryan's belittling comments at social events, Emma now spent her evenings in the company of people who truly valued her. And surprisingly, she had formed an unexpected but strong friendship with Vanessa. Inspired by Emma's courage, Vanessa had taken a long, hard look at her own life, and within a month of that disastrous dinner party, she had filed for divorce from Ethan. Watching you stand up for yourself made me realize something. Vanessa had admitted over coffee one afternoon. I deserve more than this. Ryan, on the other hand, had faded into the background. In the weeks following the dinner party, word spread like wildfire through their social circle. People began sharing their own observations, the way Ryan had always undermined Emma. The way he had relied on mockery to mask his own insecurities. His carefully cultivated image as the charming, lovable husband quickly crumbled. At the country club, where he had once thrived as the life of the party, his jokes now fell flat. No one wanted to be the next person he used as a punchline. Even Ethan, once his most loyal friend, had distanced himself. The final blow had come at his firm's annual networking event, where Ryan tried to reclaim his former status by cracking a joke about Emma in front of a new crowd. Someone in the back of the room had simply muttered, "Is this going to be as accurate as your other stories, Ryan?" The entire room had erupted in snickers, but this time, the laughter wasn't with him. It was at him. Emma had run into him once since then. At a small cafe near her new apartment, Ryan had been seated alone, attempting to flirt with a waitress using his usual smug humor. She wasn't laughing. As Emma passed his table, he called out, "Still can't take a joke, Emma?" She paused just long enough to turn back, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Oh, I can take a joke, Ryan," she said, meeting his eyes with a newfound confidence. "I just finally realized you were one." And as she walked away, she heard something she had never heard in all their years of marriage. Silence. Standing in front of the mirror in her new apartment, Emma Carter barely recognized the woman staring back at her, not because she looked different, but because, for the first time in years, she truly saw herself. She was no longer the woman who bit her tongue to keep the peace, who laughed along to avoid being the target, who shrank herself to fit inside someone else's insecurities. She was someone who had reclaimed her voice, her power, and most importantly, her joy. Ryan had once convinced her that she was the problem, that she was too sensitive, too dramatic, too difficult to love, but the truth was, he had needed to believe that, because if she had realized her own worth earlier, he would have never stood a chance at keeping her under his control. He had built his confidence by tearing her down. But confidence built on cruelty is nothing more than a weak foundation waiting to collapse. And in the end, it had. The best part? Emma didn't feel bitter. She didn't feel the need to check on Ryan's downfall or seek further revenge. That night, when she had finally exposed him, she had freed herself from his grasp forever. That was her victory, not in humiliating him, but in choosing herself, in choosing to leave, to thrive, to build a life filled with real laughter. Not the kind that came at her expense. As she grabbed her bag and headed out the door for another exciting day at work. A coffee date with Vanessa, and maybe even a spontaneous weekend trip she would have never dared to take before. Emma realized something. The best revenge wasn't just exposing Ryan. It was living a life so full, so happy, and so unapologetically her own, that he became nothing more than a distant memory. The story of Emma Carter teaches a powerful lesson. Self-worth should never be sacrificed for the comfort of others. For years, she tolerated humiliation, believing that keeping the peace was better than speaking up. But true strength comes from knowing when to walk away, from toxic relationships, from manipulation, from anyone who thrives on tearing you down. Emma's journey proves that the best revenge isn't humiliation, it's success, confidence, and joy. When she reclaimed her voice, she didn't just expose Ryan, she freed herself. And in the end, the greatest victory was not just leaving him behind, but thriving without him.